Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. Yeah. So, so I thought little bit, initially I said that I would talk about satellite, but I changed my topic to overall hybrid monitoring system for India, which is more apt for this particular group. And why we need actually hybrid monitoring system in in country like India is that just to give people a little bit more context. You all know that India is one of the most polluted regions in the world. In 2019, our environment ministry has launched this national clean air program with a focus to improve the air quality in various non-attainment cities. And by that time, there were very few monitors present. By monitors, I mean reference grid monitors. Um, in 2019, India had around 170 to 180 continuous monitors and a few hundred manual monitors, based on which actually 132 non-attainment cities have been identified where the annual air pollution level was found to be higher than the national standard. Now, in India, the national standard itself is almost 4 times higher than the WHO air quality guideline. And one of the key targets set in that national clean air program was to reduce PM level by at least 20 to 30% by 2024 with respect to 2017 level. Now, uh, when this program was launched, it was felt that there is not enough information about air quality itself, except those cities. And that is why there is a big push for alternate monitoring. Because in the last couple of years, this number of continuous monitoring stations have gone up to now 380. However, still it is not enough. And I must say that our regulatory agency, Central Pollution Control Board, is perhaps the first regulatory agency in the world who has resorted to use of satellite data in air quality management as a complementary tool to the traditional reference grid monitoring, which is a welcome step forward. However, there is some sort of resistance when it comes to the use of low cost sensors, and I will talk about it more. So, because they were very interested in applying satellite data for broader perspective, uh, we put together a national satellite based PM database for the country where we are mapping PM 2.5 at 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer spatial scale for every day, and we put together this data for the last 22 years. And I'm not going into details, but mostly what we have done is that we have used the satellite aerosol optical depth product and various other predictor variables, set up a machine learning algorithm, and then basically calculate or estimate the PM 2.5 at the ground level. I'm just showing here, how good is the satellite data. So you can see that in this particular figure, for more than, this is for Delhi direct comparisons, which is one of the higher, where you have highest PM 2.5. For example, here, if you see how typically PM 2.5 varies in Delhi, that we have seasons when PM 2.5 goes beyond 200 microgram per cubic meter. So you can just imagine the kind of pollutions that we have during this winter time. And in fact, you can see that in many days it actually exceeds 400. And you can see that the satellite is very well mimicking the pattern which is measured by the reference grid monitors. And not just for Delhi, in fact, for the entire country now so this is the comparison at daily scale, and this is the comparison at monthly scale. So in Delhi, obviously, the satellites sometimes they sort of tend to underestimate these extreme conditions when actually the pollution level is very, very high. But we are able to reduce the error down to 4 microgram per cubic meter when actually you talk about the entire country. So again, this is just showing that when you generate satellite information, compare with the in situ observations, you can see that both satellite as well as in situ observations for each and every month. This is a climatology for the last 5 years. There is a very good pattern. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is that we are very satisfied with the satellite, the performance of our satellite data. And now this data we have handed over to the CPCB for various air quality management practices. Now, because we have the data for the last 22 years, I thought I would first show you the air pollution cycle in India before moving into other discussions. Now, what you are seeing here is a kind of daily climatology. So what I have done is that I have taken all 1st Januaries for the last 22 years and just simply plotted the climatology. Um, and once I run the video, you will see that the timestamp will move from 1st January to 31st December. And just to attract your attention on the color scale, Indian national standard 24-hour PM 2.5 is 60. So anything you see in sort of yellow or red color means that we are not meeting our own standard. And if you follow the WHO air quality guideline, then the 24-hour standard is 24-hour air quality guideline is way below here. It's actually 15 currently, and you will see that as per the WHO guideline, only in this region, which is basically the Himalayan mountain range, nobody lives there. The pollution level is pretty high. Most importantly, if you focus on this entire northern Indian belt, you see that the pollution level is more than 120 microgram per cubic meter. In fact, the highest value is actually it can be easily around 170, 180 on a climatological sense I'm talking about. On an individual day, the values can go up to 300, 400 as I show. But what essentially tells us is that air pollution is not just a city-centric problem. So when you have this sort of satellite maps, you realize that you cannot clean a city like Delhi. By the way, Delhi is here if you're not very familiar with the geography. So you can see that Delhi is just a point in this sea of pollution. So it's a kind of a very large region. And why actually this large region has so much pollution? Because it's a low-lying fertile land, which is bound in north and south by high mountain ranges. So, and this is the region where more than 700 million people live. So you can think of any sources and it's there actually, and along with that there are occasional dust transport from the desert and all beyond India. So you have different natural and anthropogenic sources just trapped by topography, and then when the meteorology is unfavorable, I will see actually how the pollution cycle moves. So let me run this video. So you can see that mostly through January and February, most part of India is highly polluted. So this is the typical winter, contributions where the boundary layer is quite shallow, trapping the pollution close to the surface. Only when we sort of move to April, then you can see that the peninsular India, this part is relatively clean. However, the Indo-Gangetic plain still have value more than 60, and you have the high dust emitted from the deserts and sort of transported to the Gangetic plain. We get our monsoon typically from end of June, and you can see that as soon as the entire country is engulfed by monsoon, only during this time we breathe relatively clean air. Not so much because this is again the arid region, it does not rain much here. um, and this sort of situation continues till end of September, and again you see that as soon as we are in October, meteorology becomes worse, and you can see again the pollution is sort of building up. During this time, you have all heard about the stubble burning and all going on in Punjab and all these places, and you can see that the pollution is sort of pushed from the west to east, and then the cycle continues. So the lesson learned from this is that we need to really move from a city-centric approach to an airshed approach, because when you have such large transport of pollutions coming from outside as well as from within your city, you cannot really do anything, or cannot do much trying to control pollutions within your city. um, Now in Delhi, because it's capital, it's getting always attention. We have a very decent reference grid monitoring network. You can see in Delhi we have almost 40 monitors now. This is showing that what are the frequency of days Delhi PM 2.5 is increasing, exceeding the national standard. Uh, this is shown side by side, but I will give you the quick overview. What we are noticing is that a lot of attention, lot of emphasis on mitigation control strategies are bearing some results. So if you follow 2017 or 2018 versus 2021, you can see that in many sites, the number of days, the number of good days actually have gone up. However, this is not I mean, this is an encouraging sign, but when you look into the air pollution situation at a broader context, you feel that still 40, 50, 60% of the days are highly polluted, which was earlier was 70 or 80%. So we need to really accelerate the pace. And how to do that? Obviously, we need to develop this hybrid monitoring system, because the moment you step outside Delhi, there are no ground monitors. You have to rely only on satellite data, which is not a bad thing, because satellite can provide you sort of regional perspective. What we have done is that, using this sort of satellite data of more than 2 decades, we have first identified the major airsheds of the country. So these four maps are for the 4 seasons. So this is for winter, this is then the summer, monsoon, and then this is the sort of post monsoon, which is October, November. And you can see that this different numbers are indicating what are the major regional airsheds. And what we have done is that we are also working with chemical transport models. And using that models, we have sort of tried to understand the sectoral contributions to primary PM2.5 and secondary PM2.5 in each of the airsheds. So there is a background color in each of these maps, which is showing what is the percentage of primary PM2.5 to total PM2.5. And if you again look into these 4 maps, what you realize is that 60%, 50 to 60% of total PM2.5 is actually secondary, because the primary percentage is mostly around 30, 35, 40%, only except in monsoon when the primary contribution goes up, which tells us that it's not enough just to talk about the primary PM2.5, but from mitigation perspective, it is extremely important to mitigate the precursor gases like sulfur dioxide, NOx, and ammonia and other things. Also, each of these airshed has 2 pie charts. The one which has black outline is basically the sectoral contribution to primary. The one with the red outline is the sectoral contribution to secondary. And again, it's a little bit complicated figure, but the important message that is coming out is that uh, typically when you think about air pollution in most developed countries, it's either transport or industry and all. But here, if you see the sectoral contribution, you can see that this blue chunk is very, very dominating, which is the domestic sources. In India, we have made a lot of progress, but still a large fraction of population is using solid fuel for domestic activities, cooking and other things. And even now also domestic share is pretty much high when it comes to regional air pollution levels. Also, you can see there is a big chunk of green color, which is the transboundary. And this is actually suggesting why it is so important to really move from city-centric to airshed approach. For every place, there is almost 40 to 50% pollution is contributed from outside. And this is where I think the Clean Air Action Plan under the National Clean Air Program is failing in a way that it's not able to accelerate progress, because mostly the mitigations are being undertaken within the city jurisdiction. Um, and then also, as I said, that local sensors are slowly emerging in India in terms of air pollution management space. Um, there is a kind of apathy from policymakers in trusting. So a lot of effort in the last 2 years have gone into understanding the behavior of local sensors in such extremely high pollution conditions. And here you can see that we have done sort of 5 uh, so in the 5 cities actually across India, we have done a systematic calibration co-location exercise, and I'm not going into details, but essentially, I think the previous speaker as well as others are also talking about how to do calibrations. And again, relative humidity is playing a major role. And then, so we have done actually multiple things. We tried citizen science approach in a project with NASA. We have tried also going home to home randomly and saying that are you willing to host our sensor, and then we'll do all the calibrations and all these things. Even we have went to the schools and put up some sensors just to get engaged with the school children and all of them are working. What we found is that such kind of approach is working. People are quite excited to host the sensors, and just like the previous speaker, here also we have done extensive collocations, and then we have set up a machine learning algorithm. And this is I'm showing basically from the NASA Citizen Science project, where you can see that in two contrasting conditions, Raleigh in US, where the pollution level is around 10, 15 microgram per cubic meter, versus Delhi, where we are in 600 kind of extreme conditions, it is possible to generate reliable information from the low cost sensor. So you can see that after the calibration, how good the performance of the low cost sensors are with the reference grid monitors that we have here in our campus. And you can see that we are talking about extremely high pollution episodes of 400, 450, even 600 microgram per cubic meter on certain conditions. Now the question is that you have satellite, you have reference grid monitors, and you have low cost sensors. What's the best way really to integrate all these things into a hybrid monitoring system? And this is actually what we are currently trying to do. Now, this is one example from Delhi, where again, using the satellite data. And as I said, that Delhi has a very good reference grid monitoring network, which you can see here, the black dots. Um, and we have generated actually informations at the municipal ward level. However, if you look at the position of these reference grid monitors, you realize that these monitors are located at the hotspots, and in a way that if you only rely on these monitors, it will give you sort of high bias in your city average data. And this is because satellite data was not available when these monitors were deployed. Now this is an important question, that what's the best way to really lay out a network of sensors, whether it is reference grid or low cost, it does not matter. But let us say that in a city you have only one monitor and you really want to augment the monitoring. Is there a rational way to actually augment the monitoring network? And again, I think satellite data will be very, very useful here, because satellite data can show you where the local hotspots are, what are the more sort of local or regionally representative sites. For example, here in Delhi, you can see that all these places which are relatively better, they don't have any monitoring at all. So clearly, we are only monitoring at the local hotspots. And now going forward, actually, in many of these cities, we are going to generate this kind of information to guide policymakers when they are trying to increase the number of reference grid monitors, as well as all the scientists and citizens and whoever is wanting to put a local sensors, a kind of rational way to expand the monitoring network. Now, the other important point that we talk about, because my group, we are doing a lot of health studies. So reference then low cost sensors are the only way to really measure directly the personal exposure. However, it is unrealistic really to do personal exposure monitoring with the low cost sensors at a population scale. So what we are trying to do is that we are trying to develop a seamless exposure model targeting different population group by integrating the low cost sensor measurement, reference grid monitors. And when I say low cost sensor measurement, it's both actually outdoor and indoor conditions. Because when you talk about seamless exposure, we all know that we spend most time indoors. And again, in previous speakers have stressed on the indoor air quality. So the target here is actually to measure the indoor outdoor ratio, collect information about the time activity profile, which the previous speaker was also saying, very important, and then basically bring the satellite data and other reference grid monitors and develop personal exposure models. Um, and we have done a bit of health study. I'll very quickly go through. For example, acute exposure impacts. Multiple cities data are available in India. Earlier, it was done with PM10. Here, the health outcome is all-cause mortality. And now we have using our satellite data and some available reference grid monitors in two cities. Now studies are coming out. One is Varanasi, one is Delhi. And you can see in Delhi, two studies. Our study focused on utilize satellite-based exposure. This study focused on just the ground monitors, and you can see that with satellite, the impact is slightly more. But most importantly, clearly, we are seeing that the impact of PM 2.5 is almost more than double, or 3 times more higher than PM 10. Now, the other important point is that we started talking about going beyond PM mass. And when it comes to health, we all know that different pollution have different toxicity levels. So in Delhi, we have done this study with because Delhi is one place where we have full chemical composition informations, and you can again see uh, for different species within PM2.5, there are differential impacts. For some species, the impact is more on male population, which is this green color, and for some species, the impact is more on female population. In terms of the species, what we are finding is that the secondary PM2.5, which is basically the sulfate or nitrate or ammonium, are showing much higher, and black carbon also, which is primary. They are showing much higher impact than many other species. Um, with the satellite-based data sets, we are able to do series of studies utilizing India-specific health data. I'm just showing one example here. Now, India is one of the few countries with very high proportion of malnutrition outcomes. So, be it stunting or underweight in the children or anemia, the proportion is gigantic in India. So here I'm just showing the example on child and women anemia. And what we have found essentially is that after you adjust for other confounding factors, still air pollution is a big risk factor for anemia. And in fact, air pollution worsens malnutrition outcomes, both for children as well as women. For children, what we have found is that 10 microgram per cubic meter increase in the lifetime exposure leads to 1.6% increase in anemia prevalence. However, the impact is much, much higher for the women. And what we believe is that because there's a prolonged exposure for women of reproductive age, so perhaps the impact is more. And now we are trying to understand that what will happen in terms of the policy if we are able to meet certain clean air targets, and these results are recently published. So now finally, the last part of my talk, that we're talking about satellites, some uses, low cost sensor have certain usage, and also the reference grid monitors. But what is the best way to really develop or integrate them? And for that, actually, we had a consultation with World Bank and many other international national experts. And as a result, we published this conceptual framework for India, and it can be, valid for any other developing countries. So essentially, this framework has four components. First is basically the instrumentation. It means that what type of instrumentation you're talking about. Obviously, all these three techniques, but beyond these three, as I said, that there are now advanced instrumentations to provide information about other species like VOCs, for example, ozone and other things. Within PM also, as I showed example, that there are differential toxicity. So it's important to also have those kind of instruments which provide continuous information on PM speciations. Now, once you have all these instrumentations ready, then the next step would be actually to design a hybrid monitoring system within an airshed. And the best way to do it is first look into the satellite data, identify the hotspots, layout the network in a way that you are capturing the regionally representative locations. So use a kind of anchor the local sensor network around the reference grid monitor so that you can sort of keep calibrating these sensors, bring the satellites for a regional coverage, and then both in the upwind as well as within the city have an instrument setup which can provide you continuous information of the species. Because not just from the health perspective, but if you have those sort of systems, then it will also allow you to track the source contributions in a more real-time manner. And that's what actually the system design that we are proposing. However, what is important is that all these different systems give data in very different formats. So proper data architecture needs to be developed. And again, a lot of computation analytical skill is required to develop these things. And finally, when you have this kind of data, you do the analysis and apply for air quality management. What we also realize is that to implement this kind of framework, you need to strengthen institutional arrangements, because obviously not one party is going to host or manage all these different things. And for that, actually massive capacity building exercise is required, and we are undertaking that along with many other institutions, leading in academic institutions in India, where the ministry has formed a national knowledge network where the academic institutions are now mandated to provide technical expertise, develop capacity at the local and state level. So we have some exciting learnings also from the community engagement activities that I talked about. Um, Now, what we realized is that even a person or a citizen is hosting sensors. That person is not very clear that how he or she should behave. And previous speakers are also talking about how challenging the behavioral interventions are. So we have taken up a very small study now, which is currently going on in Delhi and Lucknow. We don't have any results or experience, but what we are doing is that every day we are sending this side of information to the people who have subscribed to our this information. So for example, you can see that this is in, I think, Delhi, and we are not only just saying air quality is poor today, but we are also giving some sort of action oriented guidance that what everyone should do versus the sensitive groups should do and all. And we are taking time to time poll and all to get us feeling that how they are responding to such kind of thing. And uh, what you realize is that we need systematic year-round campaigns for promoting clean air practices, because um, even if a person knows that his or her actions are going to sort of pollute, but in many ways actually they are, I mean, there are no other alternate ways to really move. So there are many challenges, and these are all in very nascent stage in India. We also found that if we really engage with the schools or colleges, they are useful in many ways, because the children are very serious, and if the children says to the parents that air pollution is a bad thing and please adopt clean air practice, we have some experience now that the parents listen. And they are again, we are sort of trying to strengthen our engagement with the school and college educational system on this. So just to summarize, I talked about the concept of hybrid monitoring. We are still evolving. In terms of alternate monitoring, satellite data have matured, but as I said, that low cost sensor use is still at a nascent stage, and I think we need to really bring all the groups that are working on low cost sensors in India and abroad on one platform, and we're trying to do that to share the experience, handhold each other, and sort of develop this for the country. And as I said, that more focused approach is really required for better citizen engagement, which is a completely different challenge for us. Thank you for your patience. I'd be very happy if there are any more questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sagnik, for your very interesting presentation and bringing a sort of Indian context to these discussions. And I particularly appreciate, because I know it's 3 o'clock or something like that you are in Caltech in Pasadena in California, and it's just 3 o'clock. So thank you so much for staying awake till wee hours in the day. So thank you so much. Can I please invite questions for Sagnik? Yeah, I think you can see that there is, if you can, at some point, Sagnik, later on, you can paste the link to National Knowledge Network, assuming there is one.
Yeah.
That would be helpful later on. While others are thinking about a question, I had one. Sorry, I was been bit of in and out from your presentation, but I think when it comes to low cost census, the kind of data you discussed, maybe the focus was on PM. I was just interested to know what your opinion has been in your experience of using low cost census for NOx. Generally, they don't get used. But whether that was factored in the research you've been doing with Delhi and obviously India as well.
No, not with NOx yet. I mean, we have looked into the data just from the scientific perspective. Even for PM, I will tell you there are a lot of resistance from the policymakers using low-cost sensors. In fact, there was a notification from the government saying that low-cost sensors data cannot be displayed openly. So all our projects, particularly the citizen science project, and we are doing another project with UC Berkeley, we had to sort of pull out the data from the open website and all. And this resistance is mainly because people are displaying uncalibrated data, creating a lot of confusion rather than really providing the solutions. But it's more sort of confusion whether the value is 200 versus 400. There's a large variation. So that's what I'm saying, that local sensors, in India is a very beginning stage. I think we need to go a long way. When I started my satellite work 5 6 years ago, so local sensors are just exactly like that. I think in 2 3 years they will catch up, because there are now systematic efforts in bringing local sensors into the main field. There is a kind of policy document being prepared as we speak, to understand the utility, and there is a proposal now to sort of test use of local sensors, satellite models, reference grid monitors for few cities across the country, and basically trying to see what are their strengths and weaknesses. So hopefully, I think in near future, the gaseous sensors, because specifically your question is NOx. Yes, we also noticed, but there are very few sensors actually available which measures beyond PM in India. So we have now a startup who provides actually sensors which can measure not just NOx but NOx, ozone, and VOCs. And we are currently just in the process of calibrating this.
Thank you. May I invite Bhupesh Mishra? Bhupesh, if you can introduce yourself as well before you ask question. Thank you.
Hi, Sagnik. I'm Dr. Bhupesh Mishra. I'm a senior lecturer in AI and data science at University of Gloucestershire in UK. And I've also partially working around these domains. And when I see your presentation, it is really nice. It's, when I running this kind of study here, we realize that citizens are not only aware, they're aware of themselves, but they are concerned about what happening in their neighborhood, like the constructions going outside. So they are very focused. Okay, I can control my within my room, my house, but it's not in my control, which is what is happening my outside, and that's affecting my indoor air quality. So that kind of awareness is here. So do you realize this kind of awareness in your study over in India?
Um, to some extent, yes, in Delhi, or rather Delhi National Capital Region, which has some other satellite cities, but not beyond that. If you talk about any other metro like Mumbai or Chennai or Kolkata and all, you will realize that people are not really uh, even aware that air pollution is such a big problem. Although the data, even the smaller towns like Varanasi, Allahabad, and others, the pollution level is almost same as of Delhi. Delhi, it happened because of continuous, media coverage. Lot of, always actually it's on the news and all. So in Delhi, I think people are more willing to sort of the kind of thing what you were saying, like they're more concerned about what is happening in the neighborhood. Even there is a kind of now effort to crowdsource. So one of the key problem in not just Delhi but other cities in India, which is very unique, that the municipal solid waste burning. I mean, we are trying to strengthen our waste collection system, but you all know that it's still not very foolproof, and then people just burn the waste. Now, for regulatory agencies, it's very difficult to actually catch and punish, who are actually burning. And again, for here, I think citizen science approach is proving to be very useful. So now there is a system where people can simply lodge a complaint that somebody is burning something in my neighborhood because they are concerned, and then immediately action will be taken. So yeah, we are moving in those directions, but unfortunately mostly these are focused in Delhi.
Yeah, I have one more questions regarding your research, and which is quite interesting when you see the satellite images and video you play over around the year. One of the research in my one of my lab PhD students doing the impact of visualization in citizen behavior aspects. So when we are using the waves mobile app for visualization techniques. So integrating these satellite images, so over the years, and so do you think so that could be also be a part of our data visualization aspects, rather than just not monitoring the data, but also integrating those satellite images will also have a positive impact? Just I'm asking your views rather than a question.
No, I mean, obviously, because now the satellite data for air pollution are available at global scale, right? So if you sort of create these visualizations and continuously show people, I think it's making an impact. Because in India, my experience suggests that first time people means in the policymakers as well as general public, they became aware of the fact that air pollution, first of all, is not a city specific problem, because even in the rural areas, you have seen from the figures that air quality is really bad. Second thing is that it's an year round problem, because typically 4 5 years ago, everybody thought that, just from October to January is the critical time. And that is why most of the response were stopgap kind of thing, that, winter is coming, then everybody is very aware, active in media and everything. And then after February, things improve, everybody forgets about air pollutions. So having this sort of visualization and constantly bombarding information, it actually helps. Now people realize that it's an annual scale problem and you should have sustainable solutions. You cannot have those stopgap arrangements. I would love to talk offline, maybe more on how this can actually.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for your insight. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We move to the panel now, which is the last session of the workshop. May I invite Ogot, Karine, and Professor Costas to join. Feel free if you want to use your camera as well with Sagnik. Thank you. All right. Okay, so I think this is an opportunity to sort of, talk about the thematic areas which has come out from the discussion so far. So I'll chair it, but I'll ask the first question. But I'm also looking at the chat as well if there are other questions from other participants which has come out from this set of discussions. So I'll start off with a provocative question, which kind of is partially answered and kind of, but are we ready to use low-cost devices for air quality monitoring? What are the outstanding research and practical questions when it comes to low-cost devices or low-cost sensors to make them mainstream? So it's kind of a big, broad question. Use your take on that, how you want to, answer it. But I think it would be good to discuss that briefly. Yeah. Who wants to go first? Okay,
I can go first. Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you.
And my take on this question is it's all about why the monitoring is done. So if you are to use it in policymaking, perhaps not a good idea. If you are to find areas of concern or to engage citizens, maybe local sensors can be used to kind of show variations over time, or as we have seen examples of indoor pollution, using it to kind of show citizens or inform citizens about their own actions. So I would say, depending on why the monitoring is done, local sensors may be used.
Anybody would like to add to what Karina had said, and also maybe what are the outstanding research and practical questions? It's not mainstream and there are limited usage, as Karin mentioned, but yeah, Sagnik.
Oops, sorry, I was muted. Yeah. So my take on this is that in a country like India, I mean, mostly the developing countries where resource is an issue, local sensors are quite useful for 2 3 different reasons. Not from regulatory perspective, obviously, but first to generate hyper local information, because the key question here is that how much actually is the contribution of the regional transport versus the local sources. And most of the developing countries cannot actually augment the network, ground monitor network, just with the reference gate monitor. It's too costly. And this is the reason also why we do not have any rural monitoring. And again, local sensors are proving to be very useful, because when you try to train your satellite data, you are only relying on reference gate monitors which are located in the urban areas, mostly because we do not do much monitoring beyond the urban boundaries. And again, only information that is coming from the rural areas are local sensors. For exposure perspective, local sensors are valuable. As I mentioned, that personal exposure data, if you want to generate, there are no other ways than using local sensors. In terms of research, I think what is important is that we have learned that they can be calibrated. Obviously, depending on the conditions, the durability may vary depending on sensor to sensor. But what is important is that the way calibration is done, that you, before deploying the low-cost sensor, you sort of collocate them, calibrate, and again, after some time, you do some sort of, again, adjustment or calibration. We need to evolve a system where you do calibration real time. That means you do both off-field and on-field calibration using the nearest reference grid monitors. And this is what also is one of the suggestions in that hybrid monitoring system, that you lay out these low-cost sensors, but don't rely on just the off-field pre-deployment calibration, but sort of just keep continuing. And I think China has actually done that in the Beijing airshed area. They have deployed more than 10,000 sensors, and they're doing real-time calibrations using the nearest reference grid monitor. So those are the important things also came out when we discussed the use of low-cost sensors with the regulatory agencies, because they are saying that we are interested, but we are currently sort of putting a hold on the low-cost sensors because of all these issues. That you just show us, is there a way to sort of developing uniform calibration algorithm for the entire country, or do we need it region wise, season wise, and all these things? So those are the important questions that from research community we should answer, and if we are able to do that, I think it will be easily considered within the mainstream. Thanks.
Thanks, Sagnik. Ogot, if I invite you to, and then Kostas. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, if you're ready to use low-cost sensors, I would follow what Karin said. It depends on the context and on the aim of the measurements that you want to do, or the goal of the data collection. And in my opinion, I think we should, or to get more use of low-cost sensors, maybe we should try not to mimic the standardized measurements, but try to use them, as Ramiz showed with the citizen science, trying to engage citizens to learn how to improve the air quality, to go all the way. And that, if to answer the question about what is missing here, I think the research that is missing is to get from, how do we get from the measurements and the data and the knowledge about air quality to actions to improve air quality. And the people to get the understanding. So we need to have more social scientists or behavioral scientists in to work with them, both air quality people and data scientists, but also the social scientists.
And Kostas, I think it's very, very important, the point you made, social scientists and behavioral scientists. I think that is where the research is going nowadays. So thank you, Ogot, for making that point. Kostas, if I invite you, please.
Yeah, so actually, I would agree that it has to do with the way that we see this type of applications of low-cost sensors. So I would be in favor of using them to make it clear from the beginning what one can expect and what not to expect. Generally speaking, not only when it comes to air quality low-cost sensors, when you provide to the general community, to the society, with the tools, with the instruments to play around with scientific notions, this is a positive thing, because you allow people to learn indirectly more, and to also develop a solid, trustworthy relationship between science and reality. Especially in the last years, this type of relationship has suffered a lot. So I think that this would help. From the scientific point of view and from the usability point of view, yes, of course. And it's not only in India that we need additional, let's say, data, it's everywhere. So I think that there should be a clear, different role of low-cost sensor networks to actually complement, and this is how it's going in Europe. We know that. So they are considered to be in the best option, complementary information. Coming now to how this will help in let's say, pushing further decision making. So it's another story. It has to do with social engineering and policy making. But overall, it would be a positive sign anyway. So certainly, and I'm very happy to say that having a look on the recent developments, so having even ISO standards on low-cost devices, this was really something, because now it's going to be that also for PM, there's going to be a standard. So this, even if you see it from the market point of view, this market will be structured in a way, will be organized in a way. So yes, overall, yes.
Thank you, Kostas. I'm aware of a few hands there. I'll ask one more question, which I had planned, and then I'll open to the floor, if that's okay, Bhupesh and Stuart. The next one is around indoor air quality, which is again a hotcake area. It's slowly getting the attention. However, there are still no limits from WHO, as far as I'm aware, in terms of indoor air quality exposure levels, or government level limits or guidelines. So what is the roadmap, in your opinion, to reach to a stage where indoor air quality receives same attention as ambient air quality, maybe from regulatory perspective, but also from general awareness in population?
Maybe I can start now,
Yes,
the other
please.
way around in a way. So
Yeah.
I think that we can go by example. So as soon as there was a legal framework in Europe and in the States and in Australia and in other parts of the world, people were forced, let's say, to follow this. So I think that there is a framework. There are two parallel universes. Indoor air quality is addressed as a natural, let's say, extension of our everyday living, but it's also a business environment. So if you see it from the business, from the working and health regulations point of view, there are very many precise regulations there. So although there are not special, let's say, notions concerning indoor air quality in the same manner as it's done for outdoor, there are quite a lot of regulations when it comes to health and safety regulations. And this shows that wherever there is a direct interest, the system, let's say, the policy making system produces the regulations and enforces the regulations. So again, making this more popular will help. In practical terms, there are scientific initiatives. This is also where citizen science has helped and will help a lot in understanding patterns and behaviors indoors, identifying similarities and differences between various parts of the world and various cultures. By the way, culture is a completely different story, and I can mention this as a potential question, not even for today, but overall speaking. Culture plays a role even in the way that people perceive and understand and quality information. Even let's put it this way, I'm speaking now and I'm moving my hands. There are parts of the world where this would be considered to be not common, and there are parts of the world where this would be less than expected. So this is how information is being perceived. If you want to communicate this effectively, then you need to take into account culture, the relationship with the environment, all this type of stuff. And this is where indoors, coming back to your question, also plays a role, because this is where we spend most of our time without understanding it in most cases. So that's a first reflection, let's say, a general reflection on the discussion from my side.
Yeah, I agree with the cultural part. As somebody from originally from India, you can see my head is moving quite a lot. So I agree with that. Ogot, Karin, or Sagnik, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I can go. No, I think I fully agree. But let me clarify one thing, that I was part of that WHO's recent air quality guideline update, and it was explicitly mentioned there that all the guidelines are applicable for indoor air pollution as well, for each and every pollutant. So, but for some reason, I think the perception is that these are mostly the guidelines for outdoor air pollutions. Coming back to the indoor air pollution, in general, in the urban settings, yes, the perception broadly is that, if you are indoor, you are safe. And whatever data are available, not just from India, but worldwide also, it is clearly that in most of the houses, the indoor air pollution level is at par with outdoor, and if not more. In fact, we did a survey in Delhi in different microenvironments, and we found that schools, colleges, restaurants, shopping malls, cinema halls, and all. Uh, Typically, the indoor air pollution level resonates with the people's occupancy and behavior and whatever activities they're doing. I think Constantinos also showing some interesting curves and all. And culture, yes, is very important, because in our measurements, what we found is that in India, Dhaval, that people use incense sticks and all, and those are the rich times when the indoor air pollution level just shoots. And it's very difficult to really argue with reason with the people that not to get involved in that. Yeah, so I think indoor air pollution, a focused, first of all, a focused program is required, because most of the regulatory agencies across the world, I know, they are more involved in outdoor air pollutions. There is no focused program in most of the places for indoor air pollutions. For some reason, I don't know why it is that. Same for India. uh, there is not much effort really to mobilize resource even to do anything for indoor air pollutions. So I think it's a long battle ahead, but people are realizing that indoor air pollution is important, not just from PM perspective, but when it comes to indoor, then other species become very, very important. Carbon monoxide, VOCs, and all. And then there are a lot of studies now coming up showing the health impacts, impact on the productivity, particularly in the white collar jobs and all. So I think it started gaining attention, but I think we have a long way to go. We need continuous and focused dedicated program.
Okay, thank you. Margot or Karin, if you have anything to comment.
I can comment. Indoor air quality might be harder to do like standard limit values like in general, because I think it would be hard to make air quality standard for my home. That would be kind of difficult. But as Kostas mentioned, these environmental limits that could be useful to use as standards, but they are the environmental standards are often higher than the limit values are higher than for the air quality standards. Yeah, often. But that could be, if you, I can think like if you had like standards for school environments that you have to meet, I think that could be effective, an effective measure. And also working with schools, as we have discussed here today, could be a way forward.
Thank you.
And also, I just a brief comment. I agree on what previous speakers have said, and I also found that in the Swedish sensor community Facebook group, several people were talking about and concerned about indoor air quality as well. So I think people are aware, and they are willing to measure using, for example, low-cost sensors in their own homes.
Thank you. So now I will open to the floor, and there are two people waiting. Before I invite them, there is a interesting document from Andrews Edwards, I believe from Bristol City Council, about low-cost sensors, a guide and a bit of context around it. So I will invite you to, if you want to have a look at that as well. So if I can have first Stuart and Bhupesh, if you keep your question or comment brief, we have about 4 or 5 minutes left. So I want to bring in as many as I can. Stuart, please. Thank you.
Okay, I'm calling you from Bristol Easton, which is one of the most deprived neighbourhoods in the country in a very wealthy city. We got into using low-cost sensors in 2017 and immediately found that the debate in the city was dominated by a white middle-class group looking at traffic, whereas in fact the problem we've got is we're burning stoves from gentrification. And it's been an uphill struggle to get people who think they are almost entitled to burn wood because they cycle to recognize that they're actually polluting their South Asian neighbors who know only too well from their family history just how bad wood smoke is. Any thoughts from the panel on how we can turn that one around, because it is not going away?
Okay, very interesting question. Who would like to take that?
Well, August, should we talk about Kristiansand in the Nordic Path project? We have a not similar, but in the Nordic Path project, we have one of the urban living labs. Kristiansand is, as August talked about, heavy polluted wintertime of wood burning, and as we found out while conducting a survey, it's also due to not properly burning wood. So we have had within the project, we had like a seminar on wood burning with different aspects, with authorities talking about the health effects of wood burning, with the fire department or fire officials coming to talk about proper burning methods and stuff like that. So that could be one way of doing it, to kind of inform citizens or people about how to do it, because not allowing to burn wood is not a way to go forward in Norway. And also the local authorities in Kristiansand are also issuing a program to give money or to subsidize the switch of getting the old stove out and buying a new stove, because they are better. The efficiency is better with new stoves. So that is one example from the Nordic countries, which is not, the context is different from yours, Stuart. So I don't know if that was any help at all, but to talk to local authorities to help in informing neighborhoods could be a good idea, but I don't know how to have them do it. That's another question.
But can I just add from Kristiansand, the example there is that the local authorities kind of introduced this measurement campaign that we had there, or have there, with the low cost sensors. So they are involved in the measurement campaign, and I think you, Karin, has said that when the citizens realized that they were polluting the air, or they were the problem, they were not as interested in the data anymore. They're not really interested to act upon that. So how to get through that, or by that, that's we don't know.
I note also that is very well reflected already by Joe Barnes in the comments in the chat. This is again where culture plays a role, because there are specific parts of the world that for different reasons biomass use is considered to be, let's say, a tradition, and people would not like to change this tradition. I would suspect that if somebody says to the Finnish, let's say, that you should move away from smoked saunas, it might be one of the few cases where the Finns will be, let's say, in a rebellion state. So it's casus belli in a sense. But apart from joking with this is important, because also, as you mentioned, August, if people realize, so we believe we are, in a way, allow me to say, there is this naive notion that if people do it because they don't know, if they know, they would not do it. We don't understand that in some cases, culture and habit is stronger than rationale and knowledge. So a paradigm shift is required here, and it's not easy. I don't have a direct answer to that. I think that you have to start gradually, and it will be reflected in the next generation the sooner, let's say.
Just jump in. Wood burning stoves in inner city UK cities is not a tradition. It's a new aspirational activity. and it's being adopted by a particular group of people who are seeing it as a way of raising property value and of reflecting a agreeing with a small g approach to life. And so it's actually very difficult because it is an uphill push. These are the very same people who would advocate not using a car, not using a lorry.
Yeah, I understand that. I can add to the equation another dimension. In Greece, we saw a high increase in the use of biomass burning after the severe financial crisis that people had to face. And in some cases, it's really tragic. There is no measure taken whatsoever because indirectly it is considered to be so unpopular and so unrealistic to ban or to regulate or to even take initiatives like improved machinery for burning, learn how to burn in a more efficient way. So I think that this has to do, let us try to see this from the general perspective. Under which terms, I think Ramis made some very nice notes there. Under which terms would people will be willing to change behavior? Which are the driving forces? Is it, let's say, profit in terms of money, social status, better feeling, or whatever else? Is it, I don't know, mimicking? Is it a social thing? Do we know anything by analyzing whatever is available so far in terms of the social engineering, let's say, mechanisms?
Thank you. This extremely interesting discussion, and I hate to stop it, but I have to also apologize to Bhupesh and Lucas that I can't take your questions because it's 12 o'clock, and we were supposed to end at 12, so I like to stick to the time. But thank you so much to all the attendees for attending and making this workshop quite engaging and fruitful. I pasted a link to the Scan Network website where there is also a link for joining the network so that we can inform you about the future events, but also share with you the presentations and the videos from this event as well. And I would like to thank Ogot, Karin, Sally, Ramiz, Costas. I hope I haven't. Sagnik as well. I know Sagnik had to leave. It's quite early morning for him. Everybody to come and present, all the coordinators, including Enchia and Ramiz, to support me to organize this. So thank you so much, and we'll email you with the follow up, and the link is in the chat. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you also.
Yeah.
Let's be in touch.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Let's be in touch. Thank you,
Take
everyone.
care. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ramesh, if you can stop the recording and then if you can end the meeting as well. Thank you, everyone.